Welcome all to the third session of Optimize 25 today, benchmarking your proposals. My name is Chloe Norwood. I'm the Field Marketing Manager here at Visible Thread. Before we begin, our speaker has set aside some time at the end to answer any questions you may have. Please feel free to submit those questions to the Q&A box throughout the presentation. Feel free to utilize the attendee chat and free content box where we've included some resources on our website. There is a survey on the right side of your screen. Please make sure to fill that out before the session ends. Once this session concludes, you will be automatically redirected to the next one. The recording of this session will be available after the event ends. And now I'm thrilled to introduce our speaker, who is starting to lose his voice a tad, John Williams, Managing Director of Strategic Proposals UK.
Thank you for that introduction, Chloe. As you can probably hear, Chloe was not making it up when she said I'm losing my voice, so I hope it will last throughout the session. And if my voice starts to crack, you can pretend it's to do with the emotion of thinking how powerful proposals are in helping organizations become more effective and win business. So we're going to talk about benchmarking your proposals. A little bit of context. I've been doing proposals a long time, probably not quite as long as it shows in this picture. I started working in bidding 26 years ago when I moved out of procurement to set up my first bid center. And over that time, so much has happened in our profession. I mean, for me personally, I've worked in 37 different countries with bid and proposal teams. This is me in Jerash in Jordan earlier this year. I was doing some work with a telecoms company out there, managed to take a bit of time out to go exploring. Worked all around the world. I've accumulated a team of about 40 bid and proposal managers, writers, designers around the world in different countries. And it's been a pretty amazing journey. Over that time, I've helped organizations win personally about $25 billion worth of business. So I've had a blast. I love working on proposals. And at the same time, very involved in things like APMP, of which I'm a fellow. I've been on a pretty incredible journey in the bid and proposal world, but I also think as a profession, over the 25, 26 years I've been involved in it, we've been on a pretty amazing journey as well. 26 years ago, if I said to you that organizations would have a bid, no bid process, that it was possible to persuade salespeople that they didn't have to bid for every opportunity, you would have looked at me as if I was mad. And yet these days, the discipline of having a qualification process or mantra like, is it real? Do we want it? Can we win it? Can we do it? Having a mindset that every bid should be qualified out until it's qualified in. It's something that most organizations, at least to some extent, have their minds around. The most recent APMP benchmarking survey asking about qualification showed that 83% of organizations have some form of bid, no bid or qualification process. Whether it's done brilliantly, different debate. But we've been on a journey where stuff that when I got involved in this felt new, now feels like standard. The idea, to quote my dear friend and colleague, BJ Lowney, who founded our company, that proposals would be a joy to read, that they would superbly articulate a compelling story, that people would know how to write really high impact, differentiated, client-centric content, that proposal writing would become far more conversational. That would never have been something we'd have viewed all those years ago. I was with a group of engineers yesterday, and I said, the biggest thing I've seen in proposal writing, if you can imagine these days being in a room with the client and them reading their question out loud to you, and you're reading your response back to them, would your response seem warm, friendly, engaging, professional, with the right level of technical detail, enthusiastic? That would never have been the case 25 years ago when we tried to write to impress. We overlaid this grandiose language, this formality around proposals. And these days, it's become far more conversational. They tell clearer stories. They look better. Would you agree with this statement? People see what it looks like before they read what it says. And the idea that people would have had teams of professional designers to work on the layout of their document, to work on their graphics. I was with a team the other day. I showed some examples of proposals that my design team had worked on recently, and they looked and said, these are just magazine-style proposals. And I said, they're not. They're proposal-style proposals. So as a profession, We have matured. We have got a lot better. And things that even 10 years ago would have seemed like radical or new or sources of potential competitive advantage, these days are not, right? If you're not doing some of the stuff I've already talked about, you're not yet climbing the mountain. You're still at base camp. So where do we go when we benchmark our proposal capabilities? Well, we can look. Do we have a bid, no bid process? Do we have a strategy process? Do we have good writers? Do we have good design, etc.? We can, but actually, what I'm interested in benchmarking with teams these days is what are they doing to take advantage of some of the newer trends out there, or some of the things that we've been talking about for a while that are now becoming mainstream, the sorts of things that give us a little bit of competitive advantage. So I'm going to talk about 6 things in this presentation to let you benchmark yourself against what we see the most successful teams out there doing right now. And as we go through, to give you the chance to say to yourselves, well, am I doing that? Am I leading the way? Or am I playing catch up? And the things I'm going to pick on, just half a dozen. The first is early engagement and alignment to the sales process. The second is about the back end of the process and presenting and the role of the bid and proposal professional evolving to become far more about presentation coaching than maybe it was. The third, well, I've got to talk about AI as a trend. I don't have an AI software product to sell you. I spend a lot of time doing research into how organizations are doing AI. I love dabbling. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I see the most successful organizations doing with AI. I'm going to talk a little bit about win-loss analysis, a discipline from the world of competitive intelligence that perhaps we don't do as robustly as we might. And that will tie into a kind of more strategic view of how we use competitive intelligence more intelligently than we've perhaps done in the past. And then the final one I'm going to talk about is the role of bids and proposals as a strategic function within an organization. And this sense that finally we're beginning to be taken more seriously. And things that we've done over many years where, many of the most successful change programs I've implemented in different industries around the world have been sponsored by the CEO or the CAO or the chief sales officer. That's starting to happen, I think, a bit more rigorously and robustly in the organizations who really get it. So that's the journey we're going to go on. We're going to play with each of those things. Feel free at any point to throw questions into the Q&A. I'll probably keep answers to most of them to the back end because it's a bit hard to present and keep an eye on the questions and read, but we might pick up a couple of them as we go. Okay, so let's have a look at our first area, which is around early engagement. And what am I seeing out there? And what might you be benchmarking yourself against if you really want to be at the front of the pack and delivering competitive advantage for your organization through the effectiveness and efficiency of its bid and proposal function? So I'm going to ask you a question. Don't need you to answer it. You could go into the attendee chat if you wanted and put a little answer in there for me. How clear are you? If I said to you, can you tell me what your organization's top 10 must-win bids are in 2026? Honestly, hands on heart, in the meeting chat, if you've got access to it, the attendee chat, yes or no? Can you clearly tell me what your top 10 must-win bids are next year? Just type something into the meeting chat if you've got it up on the screen. Yes or no? Anyone want to chat and tell me? That would be the first test for me of whether a bid and proposal function is operating closely aligned to the sales pipeline. I'm really thinking about how we make sure that we get more proactive in this rather than really being responsive. I'm getting a few no's, I'm getting a few yeses, a little bit of a mix. That's what we're going to be doing next year. That's my challenge to you. You really need to be aligned to the sales pipeline, to the big wins, to the things that you must win. So I'm getting a bit, maybe the top 5. Okay, so Sarah, I'll give you the top 5. I'll let you off. You got the top 5. The must-win bids in terms of new business. Next question. What about the top 10 must-renew contracts next year? Yes or no? How clear are you on what those big contracts are that your organization currently holds that might be coming up for renewal 12 months' time from now, back end of next year? Yes or no? Who's really clear on those top 10 must-renew contracts? see what the meeting chat does. Because the days where the bid and proposal function responded to things landing out of the blue, to not being closely aligned to salespeople, to not doing some of the proactive stuff where we can add value, that's not what the most successful teams are doing out there today. You know, I think that what I see from the teams we work with who are doing this stuff really well and bringing competitive advantage is really close alignment to the sales pipeline and really good engagement with the senior salespeople, focused on the value add that we can bring as bid and proposal people. So, you know, disciplines like capture management, capture planning, which are not new, right? The very first strategic bid center I built in the IT sector in the UK and Ireland 26 years ago had a team of win strategy managers, which these days might be called capture managers in the profession. It's not new, but the most successful teams are putting a lot more effort into the capture process up front. And how do we make sure that way before an RFP lands, we're getting into pole position, we're getting onto the inside track, we're getting ahead of the curve, we're influencing the clients, we're doing our homework, we're becoming the best prepared bidder, and we've wired this process in our favor. And that a good capture process then feeds into a good pre-proposal planning process. You've got to write a proposal to a client in February. Well, let's make sure that we're taking a really robust approach to doing our homework, to bringing content together, to warming the team up, to getting everyone aligned. And if you're benchmarking what you do, as per the title of this session, the most successful teams out there are really good at capture, really good at how that flows into pre-proposal planning. Are you playing in that space? That ties into the type of documents that bid and proposal functions are generating. So a real life one on the screen. So I'll get rid of it in a moment because it's real life. But I see organizations who are really succeeding, moving away from the role of being an RFP response factory into proactive proposals, into renewal proposals, proactive proposals. You know what? Let's send a document to the customer a year or more in advance to shape their view of the world, to get them to wire their RFP in our favor. Renewal proposals, that contract that expires 12 months down the line, let's send them a brilliant document now that paints the picture of what things might be like if they stayed with us, rather than it getting onto the slippery slope of competitive tendering. Alignment to campaign collateral, the story that they hear all the way through the sales of the BD process before they get near receiving our proposal. The words, the language, the messaging, the look and feel of it being aligned to what they might see further down the line in the proposal, which we've always produced traditionally. And something we started playing with a couple of years ago that I absolutely love doing is birthday proposals. And we've got quite a lot of clients who pick this up and do this rigorously and routinely. I'll give you an example. Let's imagine that you find out tomorrow that you've won a contract. Okay? 6th of November, 2026. Sit the people down who've been delivering that contract with the people who are involved in writing the bid that helped you win. And do a page turn. How's that been for you? What worked? What didn't work? What ended up being different? Oh, you know, in answer to that, we said that we'd do the following, and the client loved it. And we got some really good quotes from them. Okay, let's farm all of that and feed it back into our knowledge base. So it's a sense when you're benchmarking what you do of the bid and proposal function, having moved away from responding, from reacting, into being far more strategically aligned with the sales cycle, with the business development cycle, and adding more value to the sale. That's the first one. How are we doing so far? Anyone looking at this going, yeah, we do all of that? I hope so. Some of you might be looking, going, maybe we could do something a little bit different or sharper. The second one is our role in relation to presentations. I was at a huge conference about 3 weeks ago in London with about 1,500 procurement people. And needless to say, the topic of AI came up a fair bit about how they were using it to understand their procurement requirements and go to market, but also what they were thinking of, what they were seeing from bidders who were starting to use AI? And was that a good thing or was that a bad thing? And how might they handle that? One of the consequences we're already seeing relatively frequently of using AI is buyers looking at documents and going, computer says proposal. This suspicion that the documents that they receive are AI generated and lacking authenticity. I'll tell you the story of a friend who runs a bid center in financial services. And they lost a deal. They went to get a debrief from the client. And the client said, by the way, we did notice you'd used AI to write your proposal. And my friend said, well, how did you realize that? And they said, because there were whole swathes of your documents that were word for word identical from those from your competitors. And then the procurement person looked a bit sheepish and said, but don't worry, we only worked it out because we were using AI to evaluate your proposals and AI recognized itself. How does that play into presentations? Well, many of the markets that we work in, back in the day, which could be 2 years ago, you'd submit the written proposal and then the client would say, can you come and present that? And that might have been 3 weeks or longer after the written submission had gone in. And what we're seeing more and more is that timescale is getting crunched. Submit the proposal, come and present really quickly. And I'm seeing more and more organizations that are getting very short turnarounds, a collapsed timescale between the written proposal and the presentation. And I'm seeing more and more organizations that are therefore starting to put a lot more effort into presentation coaching. Their space to shine is still the written submission, but their space to shine also has to be through doing some of these things. How are we scripting presentation content? How are we designing high impact collateral, not just slide decks, but other things that we can use during the proposal presentation? Getting far cuter at the rehearsal process to make sure the team is really ready to present the story coherently and with impact. That includes things like question planning. What are the top 10 questions the customer's going to ask you, and how will we answer those? What are the 10 nastiest questions that they're going to ask you, and how will we handle those? What's the one question we really don't want them to ask, and how will we handle those? So there's a shift from being focused in a proposal function or an RFP response function, from focusing on the written proposal into focusing far more on the written proposal plus the pitch, the presentation, the interview, becoming something we're seeing the most successful teams doing. And part of that is also a shift we're seeing in procurement teams putting more emphasis on the face-to-face part of the process. The 60% number here is just an anecdote from a bid we were involved in fairly recently. And they had scoring, as you'd expect, for quality and for pricing. And then they had scoring for the quality of the face-to-face presentation. And 60% of the overall score went on the face-to-face stuff. So the question coming in the chat says, does that mean buyers are using the presentation as an opportunity to hear the elevator pitch of the RFP and therefore avoid needing the read for RFP? No, they're reading them still, but they're doing so with a bit of cynicism. And it's a really great proposal, plus a really great presentation. So in this journey we're on, again, looking at things where organizations are getting some competitive advantage, those proposal teams that are responding to this and getting far better at the presentation design and coaching part of the process are the ones that are probably going to be most successful moving forward. Okay, 6 trends. This is a quick canter through best practice, okay? The third one, AI. We're all using AI, right? If I'd done this session 2 years ago, a lot of people would have not actually even played with AI. But using AI sensibly to add value to the process. I am not a software person, right? I love tech. I love playing with tech. But I do think what AI brings is, and it brings us to as an inflection point for proposal careers. I think it's the point where those are people who get excited and who realize the benefits from this to support really good bid and proposal processes and capabilities driven by really good content can gain some true competitive advantage. Just a quick yes in the chat if you're really excited by AI. Because I know that not everybody is, right? Some bid and proposal folks, frankly, are finding it a bit scary, a bit daunting. a bit new, a bit different, maybe threatening to their function. I actually think this is a hugely exciting thing for us to consider. Okay, let me give you a couple of thoughts. Yeah, I'm excited by tech. This is my first computer. This is a Sinclair ZX81 from 1981. You used to plug it into the television. It had 1 kilobyte of disk space, only black and white. And if you wanted to save any files, you saved it to a tape recorder. So I've been around tech. I love tech. I love playing with stuff and doing new stuff. How do we use this to really add some business value? Okay, let's give you a couple of thoughts. And I'm going to share what I see as 3 levels of maturity out there in terms of where organizations are at with their thinking of AI. There's the organizations who are in the strategic camp here. There's the organizations who are in the tactical camp, and the organizations who are in what I'd term ad hoc. And I'll give you a little profile of each of those. And at the end of this, I'm going to ask you to say, where do you think you are, right? Ad hoc, tactical, or strategic? Strategic. I published a big research report in the summer where we spent a lot of time doing interviews with senior folks in the bid world saying, how are you using AI? What's working? What's not working? And the organizations that are getting this, here's some of the things that are happening. They're using AI across the bid and proposal lifecycle. It is not just about content generation. Okay, that's a sweet spot for this, but they're using AI to really help with thinking about strategy, with thinking about capture, with thinking about competitive analysis, with thinking about their solutions and their pricing model. It is not just about generating answers to RFP questions. The organizations that are doing really well with this are those who've really carefully thought through how might AI help us in our bid and proposal function, and given real thought to defining their requirements before they've gone out to look at the solutions in the market and source the right solutions out there. So they've not been driven by the tech. They've been driven by understanding the art of the possible from the tech, but are really clear, this is how this could add value in our organization, in our landscape. And then they've deployed or created some tools and agents. AI is at the heart of how they craft strategies for winning work, about the stories they tell, about the why us, why not them, about the win themes, tied into the storyboarding process, tied into the review process at the back end. And they're giving some really careful thought to how subject matter experts use AI. I'll tell you a story from a benchmarking project I ran for a software company up in the northwest of England last year, late last year. And I talked to a very senior account director. And the bid team hadn't had the capacity to support a particular bid. So I said, so how did you write the proposal? He said, that's easy. I turned to my new friend, Mr. Copilot, and he wrote it for me. I said, how did that go? He said, we won. I said, how's that working? He said, don't ask. So there's something about AI being used to win business, but win good business. Some of you might be in that strategic camp. And this is a simplified session doing all of that and much more. Some of you might be in the tactical camp. Broadly, how would I define the tactical status or the tactical camp for AI? The first sign is that they've not done a step back and think about how we could use AI sensibly. They've done a very, very valid thing, which is that we've already got some knowledge management tech. The tech provider has built some AI in, and therefore we're using it and exploiting it. And people are getting tremendous results from doing that, right? But it is vendor-driven rather than business-driven. The second thing that we see happening in the tactical space is pointing a large language model at SharePoint. We've got all this stuff here. We've got Copilot. It's been rolled out across the organization. Let's point the large language model. And we're getting some interesting stuff, depending on the quality of what's in SharePoint. Some fairly tactical use of ChatGPT or Copilot to do some research and or editing. I mean, it can be useful for editing. I played the game recently of ask Copilot to tell you about yourself So I said, tell me about John Williams' strategic proposals. It immediately came back and said, John has 1 wife, 2 children, and 3 cats, which was a nice summary of my life. It can have a nice turn of phrase. They're picking up point solutions out there. Who's using Crystal? Crystal knows. Lovely little tool that points at people's LinkedIn profiles. If you know who's going to evaluate your proposal, Crystal will look at what people share, like, write, comment on LinkedIn, and it'll produce a personality profile for them, a disc profile. It will tell you the sort of language to use to influence them. Wonderful stuff. I first came across this probably 2 years ago where someone used it on me before I interviewed them for a job. I thought they were wonderful. I then started playing. First person I profiled using Crystal, I used it on my wife's LinkedIn profile. It told me the language to use to appeal to her. For 2 days, she thought she had the most empathetic husband in the world. Before I led on, it was AI. Okay, some of you will be in that camp, and broadly your AI experience to date will be in that tactical camp. And then the third camp around AI is what I might call tactical. And those are the folks who are just going, we can't use this. Our IT department is paranoid about it. Our IT department wants to get their own mind around AI before we're allowed to play with it. I use the phrase Luddites, somewhat disparagingly, deliberately. There are organizations I work with where the bid and proposal people just, AI is too confusing. It's all moving too fast. So we're not really doing anything because we just can't get our minds around. And also we've got the pressure of day-to-day working on bids. And maybe individually, but not collectively, they've dabbled with Copilot. People in the bid and proposal function haven't been trained to use it. But, they've picked a few things up. They've tried a few bits and they know how to do a few prompts, but there's no real science behind it. Some of you might be in that camp. Before I go on to this, actually, let me go back. Ad hoc, tactical, strategic. In the meeting chat, where are you on those definitions? Just put in for me, ad hoc, tactical, or strategic. I'm curious. Anyone want to share? I'm hoping some of you are going to put something in the chat here. Anyone want to share? Brilliant, Mary. Mary's in strategic. That's brilliant. Anyone else? Sarah's in ad hoc. Anyone else? And a bit of a mix, and that's what you'd expect, right? And people who are strategic today might have been ad hoc a year ago. People who are tactical now will become strategic. What I'm trying to do is let you do a little bit of a benchmark of where you are in the journey. Okay, a couple of flavors of AI, partly informed by that research I did with leading organizations on their use of it. As someone said in the research, content is king, or perhaps, or queen. I'm absolutely, I like Joe's novel use as a VT, interesting. I absolutely believe that it's what you point AI at that's the secret for much of this. I have a view that at the center you need good curated content. That's the disciplines of good knowledge management that we all would have had over the years, right? The regularly used building blocks, the frequently asked questions, owned by the right experts in the business, brilliantly written, brilliantly designed, a mindset of continually up to date. It's then pointing your AI at trusted content. That's the proposals we've sent out, hopefully winning ones, perhaps with some feedback layered in there. It's our marketing collateral. It's trusted benchmarking data, survey data. It's trusted content from the projects we've been delivering for clients out there and measurable stuff from that. And then and only then, pointing AI at global content and using large language models that go out there and have a look at what's out there in the big wide world in terms of content and draw on all of that. But I actually think that good AI, in a funny way, means the old-fashioned disciplines of content curation and knowledge management become even more important now than they've ever been in the past. And of course, layered with human intelligence. It's a simple formula. AI plus HI is greater than AI, or AI plus HI is greater than HI, right? The combination of the two starts to give some real source of competitive advantage. But you've got to have knowledge to be able to manage knowledge. And it's this sense of a journey of how we use AI to really build on some of the cool stuff that we've already got in the organizations. And one of the things we did in this benchmarking survey was to ask what are the five words that come to mind first that you'd associate with AI and bids and proposals? And this might resonate with a few of you. Opportunity, exciting, challenge, time-saving. The word that's not on there, that's not big, that's not prominent, is winning. And for me, good use of AI is about winning more business, not just about saving time. And I am also, and I wind this session up on AI. Now, this wonderful quote, assume this is the worst AI you'll ever use. This is moving really quickly. And what we're using as AI today compared to what we'll see in 2 years' time be radically different, right? So a little bit of a journey that we're all going to be on. Right, 6 key trends. We're up to number 4 on the list, the discipline of win-loss analysis. Yes, no in the meeting chat. Do you regularly ask your customers for verbal feedback on the proposals you've submitted? And I'm emphasizing verbal feedback, by the way, not, the written notes that perhaps some government buyers are mandated to require you. And not a huge number of you are jumping in there. Yes, we regularly ask customers for verbal feedback. That's interesting. Some of you do. Okay, that's cool. Good to see. Phew, I'm glad there's some yeses. Those of you who do your customers give great feedback? And I used to work in procurement. I know that when customers give feedback at the end of a procurement process, they can often be quite defensive. They're sat there thinking, I'm not going to tell anyone anything that lets them try and reopen the debate. I'm not going to turn around and say, well, one of the reasons you lost is we didn't think your project manager had enough experience, because the bidder might turn around and say, well, we gave you 3 examples of where the project manager had enough experience. And so therefore we might find that the bidder's going to start challenging our decision, or at the very least go back to our senior exec and say, well, we're not sure your procurement team made a very good decision there. Okay, so there's this little bit of a barrier that we don't always get the feedback that we need or deserve on proposals. And if we buy the age-old statement that feedback is the breakfast of champions, a very well-known phrase out there from Ken Blanchard, I absolutely believe that good feedback is critical to continuously improving what we do in a very competitive world. So I spent quite a lot of time over the last few years with a body called SKIP. Anyone been involved in SKIP? The Strategic Consortium of Intelligence Professionals. It's the bid and it's the APMP equivalent for competitive intelligence folks. Nice picture of Prague there. I did the afternoon keynote, a strange concept, at the conference, the European conference in Prague about 18 months ago, talking about the role of competitive intelligence in the bid process, which I'll come back to. I'm trying to learn from some of these things. There's some very bright people in that space, some very good academics in that space as well. And the bit that I was interested in was the only piece where the competitive intelligence community really touches what we do as bid and proposal folks is around win-loss analysis. And I'll simplify the process, but it goes something like this. The first thing you do is you wait until the dust settled. You don't try and get feedback through this process whilst the heat is still on, whilst the deal is still vaguely live. You leave it perhaps a couple of months to then go and try and get some honest reviews. You sample clients. You don't try and do it for every single client. That would be crazy. You pick a few clients and you go and do a structured deep dive interview with an independent interviewer, not the salesperson, not one of the bid people, someone independent who's going to be able to capture some really objective feedback. You review that feedback. You spot trends in that feedback. And then you use that feedback. And as I say, magic happens, both in terms of feedback into the bid and proposal process and into the sales community and into your competitive intelligence, but also into things like proposition development. You know what? What's happening here is the clients want it in blue and we can only do it in yellow. Please, we need to go and build it in blue. So there's a whole sense of discipline that's out there in perhaps a world that many of us don't touch around competitive intelligence, that actually an awful lot of bid teams that are being really, people are picking this stuff up and doing really cool stuff. And that's part of a broader sense of intelligently using competitive intelligence. I have a view that competitive intelligence is critical for good bidding, but often done incredibly badly. So again, let's just share some thoughts on what we see to help you benchmark an area that can bring competitive advantage around CI. We have a tool called the Proposal Benchmarker, a strategic proposals tool. It asks 100 or so questions about your proposal capabilities. It's online. It's been used by 1,100 organizations. If you feel like it, you could go and have a play with it, proposalbenchmarker.com. But why do I mention it? It's been used by people all over the world, right? Different bid proposal sales teams to assess their capability. And one of the questions we ask in there is, get people rate themselves on this question. We have a robust process for managing competitive intelligence that we use to provide insights when working on our strategy, solution, and storyboards. And people can kind of pull themselves across the scale to whatever they think the answer is. Challenge you, maybe just for a minute, to think, what's your answer to that question? Okay, here's the data. The number of people who said, we definitely don't have, a robust 26%. Not really, 53%. 18% largely we do. 4% absolutely. Competitive intelligence is at the heart, managed really well, of how we approach good bids and proposals. That's a bit scary, right? Only 4%. If you buy the argument that the job of the proposal is to tell the story, why us, why not them? If we don't know who they are or what they're going to say, our chances of beating them is lower than it might potentially need to be. And most of your organizations will be awash with competitive intelligence. Your C-suite will have loads of competitive intelligence. Your operational people will find out all sorts of stuff. They'll be on client site. They'll be hearing things that the customer is saying. They'll be hearing things about competitors. It's about having the ear to the ground for a bid function to the people who have the ear to the ground on client sites. Your sales and marketing people will have loads of contact with competitors and be hearing loads of stuff from your customers. Your marketing people don't build propositions in isolation, don't design websites, don't write marketing collateral in isolation. They do it with an absolute sense of competitive intelligence. And bid CI sits in the middle of that. And the first thing the successful organizations are doing in the bid and proposal space about competitive intelligence is understanding the CI landscape internally and what are the things we can take and what can we draw on. And I'll just give you a few targets. Is the head or director of your bid or proposal function measured on whether they've got great competitive intelligence? Have you even defined what great competitive intelligence looks like and feels like for your organization? Is there a head or champion of it in your bid function? Have you got a process and toolkit for it? Those of you bidding into government or the public sector, are you really using freedom of information stuff subtly, successfully to get competitive intelligence? Lots of clever ways that you can do that. If you're interested in this, we published a white paper earlier this year called Bid Competitive Intelligence, The Art of Winning, because enough people were starting to say, we can see some real benefit from this. We thought we'd better do a deep dive. Again, you can get it from our website, or I can email it to you if you want. Okay, so sixth key trend, the sense of bidding of proposals as being a strategic function in the organization. Here's my little test for you. I want you to imagine, let's just imagine for a moment you're in the office. I know a lot of us work virtually. Let's imagine after this conference tomorrow, you're in the office and you walk into your CEO's office. What is she going to say to you? Is she going to say, hey, hi, I know you were Optimized 25 at Optimized 25 over the last couple of days. What did you learn? What can I help you with? What did you pick up from that I can help do that would really help improve your lives and help improve the quality of what we're doing and our win rate and help us retain more clients and grow the business? Or if you walked into the CEO's office, would they press the panic button saying, who the hell is this? I believe passionately that what we do in bids and proposals is fundamentally important to the well-being of our organizations. The most successful change programs that I've won over the years that I've run have all been delivered by sponsors in the C-suite who understand the potential this has for developing their business. Put another way, what we do is the job protection and creation engine of our organization. I love working with clients and being in their office and going, that team exists because we helped win a bid, because the bid function we helped set up won a bid. I love seeing projects that my clients have delivered because the proposal team have written a brilliant proposal that have captured their client's imagination and led to them being selected. Drives jobs, protects jobs, drives revenue, protects jobs, creates margin. The latest APMP micro certification is in strategic response management. This even getting embedded into the professional qualification disciplines out there. We ran our first course on that a couple of weeks ago. So this sense of what we do being taken more seriously, the organizations, if you're benchmarking yourself, who are really at the forefront of this, are the ones with that support on high, who are very good at articulating messages to senior execs about why what we do matters so much, and getting support. And it ties in a little bit to some work we did with APMP's Mental Health Affinity Group a little while ago. We published this probably probably September. And we published something called the Proposal Happiness Index. And we asked 3 questions, and we had hundreds of replies from the bid and proposal community. How happy are you in your role? Average score 6.8 out of 10. How meaningful do you find your work as a bid or proposal professional? 7.2 out of 10. How valued do you feel at work? 6.3 out of 10. The numbers are okay, but they're not great. You might be looking, I wonder what my score is on that. Are you happier and feel more valued than the average person out there? Or maybe not. And we use that to drive a little model that we presented in the report, because we were worried, right? We were worried that within that survey, 22% of the people who responded were really struggling, really low scores in answer to those questions. So I'm not going to dwell on these because I don't want this to feel depressing for us. But there are a lot of folks in our profession who are struggling, working in environments that are not fun to work in. And if that's at all like your bid or proposal function, we need to do something about it, right? Because we can't stand for this as a profession. Something called the Proposal Happiness Toolkit. Things that organizations are doing to make sure that their bid and proposal professional community is really buzzing. And some of these times, the stuff I've already talked about. The idea of early engagement, the idea of getting smarter at qualification. No one likes working on a bid. They know they're going to lose. A really clearly defined engagement model between the proposal team, the bid team, and the rest of the organization and the sales function. Really strong capacity planning. The size of most bid and proposal functions is determined almost bottom up. We never had one, then we appointed a couple, then we put another couple more, then someone left and someone got promoted, then we brought another few in. Have you ever really done that top-down analysis of what resources needed to help the business win? The right roles and specialisms and the right people. Really strong training. That, I've always had a view that all those involved in proposal development must be trained in the necessary skills. And when you teach them, when you train them, then they understand and they start to behave in the right way. Resources, tech, the use of benchmarking to make the case to senior execs about why what we do matters and how to get better. I'm really celebrating success. I hope that a lot of you on the call are really celebrating the wins you have, and people in the business are doing that with you and for you. So in terms of benchmarking your capabilities, the subject of this session, I've not covered the basic stuff. I've not covered the stuff that gets you to base camp, because we're doing that, I hope. You're not getting competitive advantage from that. If you're not at base camp, then you need to do something pretty quickly to accelerate, to get some of those core building blocks in place. But the most successful teams out there, I see playing with some of these and a few more, right? But these are the flavor of where successful teams are. So which are you doing, but which are your competitors doing? Because this is all about gaining an edge in competitive markets. Okay, feel free to go and have a play with the benchmarking tool if you want to. That'll give you some ideas on some of this. Feel free to email me. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you for taking the time to attend this session. This is a wonderful conference, right? The list of speakers presenting at Optimize 25 is fabulous, and huge thanks to Visible Thread for putting this on on behalf of the bid and proposal community. I'd love to chat separately outside the call. I'd also love, if we've got any questions, to take questions. So I'll move back because that's the next slide. Have we got any questions? Feel free to put them into the Q&A or the chat, and we'll pick up on them. So it's just time for a few questions. Well, thank you, Amy and Shane. Chloe, I think we've stunned them into silence.
Yeah, I think we have. If anyone has any last minute questions, John would be happy to take one or two. I'll give everyone a second before we close out. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any. Of course, if you do end up having a question, I'm sure you could contact John directly, whether that be his contact information or on LinkedIn. Oh, okay, here I see we have one question. John, how much influence do you see bid having on the qualification and capture process versus executive determining this?
Capture is the first stage of a good bid process. It depends how you define bid and proposal, right? But I define the bid as being the end-to-end process, from this being a twinkle in the salesperson's eye to the customer signing on the dotted line, and putting a good capture plan in place and then managing that overall kind of capture and bid. That's fundamental to what a good bid team does. That then feeds into the proposal process. How am I going to produce a great proposal? How am I going to plan for that from good pre-proposal planning? Bring it to life in a great submission. Bring it to life in a good presentation. So it's fundamental, right? There is, and you hint at, I think, at some interesting stuff to be done about the alignment of the role of the capture manager versus the alignment of the business development person. And it's not about treading on their toes, right? But it's also not about letting business development people run away too quickly and not take accountability and only re-emerge when they have to collect the commission at the end of the day. George asked, where's the benchmarking tool? That was on a couple of slides ago, if I can go back. No, I can't get to it easily. www.proposalbenchmarker.com, George. Just search for Proposal Benchmarker, you'll find it. I shouldn't have gone back in my slides. I was trying to be helpful to George, and it's all gone horribly wrong. There you are, George. Teresa, Shane posted, what do you think are the best ways to celebrate wins? Loudly. I mean, I think there is stuff about rewarding people for what they've done. There's stuff about recognizing people for what they've done. There's stuff about communicating it. How many of you have a monthly call? I like to call them a win call, where you invite anyone in your bidding community to show up and you just talk about a bid you've just won and what went well and what are the learnings from that. And, you know, success breeds success. And I think bid and proposal people naturally tend to be a bit shyer than salespeople. Salespeople tend to be, I've won, ring the bell, I'm the hero. I think we need to do a bit of the same. Now, how do you push gently for feedback if they're reticent to provide it? Well, there are some techniques and some standard questions for going and getting a client debrief, you know, at the end of the bid. But that's one of the thoughts about doing this win-loss approach now, and kind of an independent way of looking at it, because it is away from the heat of the battle. It can be sold in as, look, you know, we're trying to improve. We want to make sure that the next time we send you a proposal or proposal to someone else, we get better at it, and we'd love to get your feedback. But it's done in a very, very non-confrontational way. And there's a little bit of that of selling into the person getting the debrief, the benefit for the client. You know, you want to make sure that the next time we send you a proposal, it's better, right? Because that's your job, is to solicit the best proposals from the market, the best solutions, the best propositions you can possibly get. The job of procurement is not to choose from the best of a bad bunch in the evaluation room. So a little bit of feedback can help. Out of interest, in passing, how often do your procurement people ask for feedback on their procurement process? Answer, not at all. That's quite a fun thing to do as well. Right. I think we've probably gone through the Q&A, Chloe, so probably time is almost up, right?
Yes, yeah.
And my voice has lasted to the end. Brilliant.
I knew it would. Okay, well, John, any last final parting thoughts before we close out?
I just wish you luck. I think this is the most incredibly exciting profession to be part of. I think we have a huge impact on our organizations. I think there's a load of cool stuff going on out there that you can pick up and embrace that might add a little bit more value. And I hope you found the session useful, and feel free to, email me, connect on LinkedIn, pick arguments with me. I love a good argument. But I hope you found it useful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this absolutely amazing conference. So thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you, John, for sharing your expertise with us. And thank you for so much interaction in the chat to all of our viewers and joining us for this session. Please do make sure to fill out the survey and leave any feedback that you may have for John or the Visible Thread team. Once this session ends, you will be automatically redirected to the next session, which begins in about 9 minutes at 12 o'clock Eastern time. This session is going to be a Visible Thread deep dive, what's new and what's next. This session is live. So they will be answering questions about the Visible Thread platform. So go on and head over there, and we'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.